The finalists in beat reporting are Nick Miroff of The Atlantic for his sustained and vigorous coverage of the Trump administration's immigration crackdown, which included reporting on a deportee sent to El Salvador's terrorism confinement center and on immigration enforcement officers facing daily deportation quotas. Hamid Aliaziz of The New York Times for deeply moving and insightful immigration coverage that held powerful federal agencies to account and revealed the agonizing choices faced by migrants whose lives were upended by the Trump administration's policies. Jeff Horowitz and Engin Toom of Reuters for inventive and revelatory reporting on Meta that detailed the technology company's willingness to expose users, including children, to scams and AI manipulation. And the Pulitzer Prize goes to Jeff Horowitz and Engin Toom of Reuters. The finalists for national reporting: staff of Bloomberg for coverage of the Trump administration's deregulation of cryptocurrencies, which revealed conflicts of interest within a complex industry filled with unusual characters. Staff of Reuters, notably Ned Parker, Linda So, Peter Eisler, and Mike Spector, for documenting how the president used the U.S. government and the influence of his supporters to expand executive power and exact vengeance on his foes. Staff of the Washington Post for reporting that tracked the impact of the Trump administration's mass deportation campaign, following it from a Chicago park to the White House, a tent encampment in Texas, and a Salvadoran prison. And the Pulitzer Prize goes to staff of Reuters, notably Ned Parker, Linda So, Peter Eisler, and Mike Spector.
Myself and many of my Reuters colleagues embarked to document President Donald Trump's campaign of retribution last year, which targeted an array of his perceived enemies, from federal judges who ruled against him to federal prosecutors who held accountable the rioters who stormed the Capitol on January 6th. Other targets included law firms who took cases the president didn't like. Also in the crosshairs were federal workers, people who criticized Charlie Kirk in the wake of his death. We documented the entire conservative media ecosystem that went after people who were critics of the president. Really just an all-hands-on-deck effort. It was really just an army of reporters working from almost the beginning of the year all the way to the end of the year. I think in the end we published about 7 special reports that made up this series, which we ended up labeling The Revenge of Donald Trump, which was apt because it covered an array of targets of the president's retribution campaign.
Because getting anything good requires digging so very many dry holes and having so many conversations that don't lead to things that are immediately tangible. So, I think it's, I'm really lucky being on the enterprise team. I have a lot of room, but I think this stuff did come out of, even before I was at Reuters, I covered Meta for the last 7-8 years. Just sort of going from covering the day-to-day stuff to occasionally being able to say, hey, hold on, stop the car. There's something to see here, is just a really wonderful opportunity to have. The younger version of me is still remarkably excited that I'm getting paid at least 40 grand a year and working in journalism as a this being still a viable career option. Yeah, look, like I don't I definitely don't feel like my career or any of my work was bound for glory. So this would have come as a big surprise to me if you told me that this was going to be happening at any point. So
This is always a day of celebration in our communities, but perhaps never more so than today, as we face tremendous political and economic pressures. The finalists for international reporting: Dake Kang, Garance Burke, Byron Tao, and Iruda Gosal of Associated Press, and contributor Yael Grauer, for an astonishing global investigation into the state-of-the-art tools of mass surveillance created in Silicon Valley, advanced in China, and spreading worldwide before returning to America for secret new uses by the U.S. Border Patrol. Stephanie Nolan of the New York Times, for cataloging in devastating detail the harm caused to vulnerable people across the developing world by the Trump administration's abrupt dismantling of U.S. humanitarian aid, which had fought disease and promoted good health for decades. Staff of the Wall Street Journal, notably Jared Malson, for its intimate, humanizing reporting that laid bare the Assad regime's atrocities against the Syrian people over 13 years of revolution and war. And the Pulitzer Prize goes to Dake Kang, Garance Burke, Byron Tao, and Iruda Gosal of Associated Press, and contributor Yael Grauer. The finalists for public service are Chicago Tribune, for its powerful coverage of the Trump administration's militarized immigration sweep of the city. The Wall Street Journal, for work led by Khadija Safdar and Joe Palazzolo, revelatory and forensic stories that helped provoke the release of millions of Justice Department files about Jeffrey Epstein's powerful network. The Washington Post, for piercing the veil of secrecy around the Trump administration's chaotic overhaul of federal agencies and chronicling in rich detail the human impacts of the cuts and the consequences for the country. And the Pulitzer Prize goes to The Washington Post.
播报新闻是我的日常，必须时刻保持妆容和皮肤的最佳状态。当来到人生中最重要的时刻，也是 KS 逆时奇迹帮助我轻松驾驭，闪闪发光。KS 逆时奇迹活肤露全效精华、精华霜，多达5种 EGF 6大冻龄关键成分，保湿效果让我非常满意，小细纹也不再困扰我。我就是我自己的最佳女主角 ，KS 让我从容自信，光彩动人。我是我人生中的大女主。我的最爱，我做主。KS 逆时奇迹系列热卖中，下单请上快点购，透过中天新闻网 App 下单立减50，或输入 CTI 推荐码有额外折扣。